7 o'clock, please stand up. Do a pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start, I'd like to ask a favor from everybody in the room to either silence their phone or put it on vibrate. Marianne, can you take the call, please?
Roll.
Mr. Richin?
Here.
Ms. Ruska? Mr. Jepson?
Here.
Dr. King?
Here.
Mr. Cindy?
Here.
Mr. Welch? Mr. Welch?
Okay, now we're going to move into the public hearing in regards to the 2016-2017 budget. A quorum being present, the first order of business is to hold a public hearing on the budget, prepared in tentative form as set forth in the minutes of the meeting of the Board of Education held on July 12, 2016. The Secretary of the Board of Education has submitted affidavits and certificates of publication from the Landmark and the Riverside Brookfield Suburban Life, stating that a tentative budget for District 208 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2016 and ending June 30th, 2017 was placed on file and was conveniently available at the district's administrative offices. Notice was given that a public hearing on said tentative budget will be held at 7 p.m. on September 13th, 2016. Due notice has been given of the public hearing on the budget and all other statutory requirements preliminary to the holding of such a public hearing have been complied with. Dr. Skinkis and Mr. Brannick will present and explain the 2016-17 budget and answer any questions from the board. Dr. Skinkis and Scott.
So first memo that I'd like to direct the board's attention to is from Scott Brannick. This is a memo I received on the budget for September 13th meeting. Scott and I have done since our August board meeting is we went through and addressed all the items that we can try to make as close to final as possible so that this is giving a true prediction of the school district's budget for the FY17 school year. In this memo are assumptions that have been adjusted with some rationale. I'll let Scott introduce those, and then if there's any questions on those. Then after that, we had one additional memo that discusses about locking in our rates with energy for 32 months. And then there's where I think there were a few minor questions submitted on the budget that will be addressed as well. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, the two major assumptions for the revenue side is we changed the tax collection to 98.5%, which increases our revenue to try to reflect what historical averages are on it, and adjusted our tax collection, our general state aid collection based off of historicals, reflecting the 88%, which is what the district has collected over the last 4 years. On the expenditure side, we put in 3.5% as the new placeholder for all certified staff and ESPs. That is an increase from what 2% was the previous placeholder. All salaries have been adjusted based off of the personnel report that was done to start the school year. And medical insurance was adjusted based off of our personnel that we had to start the school year. When we went through
Second page, yeah.
the bid packages for the projects that are going out there currently, the roofs and the main gym, we did some adjusting on life safety and capital, just switching out the $200,000 from life safety, moving into capital after looking at the bid packages to make sure that it reflects the overall bids that's in our projects that are going on right now.
So the projects, there was a question submitted on that. Are we still on budget? Yes. When we looked at the July budget that Tim had put together, the numbers added up to be exactly the bid package. However, it was off by about $200,000. It was too high on the life safety side and too low on the capital improvement side, so that was moved.
And the final assumption was for locking in electricity. at a fixed rate. There is the memo that is in it. You would see the cost savings for the first year, and then it would stay relatively flat for the next 2 years onto that, creating budget certainty and being able to make more closely estimates moving forward by locking in the rates.
Scott, why don't you address the few general questions you received on just the budget?
Okay, the main questions were pretty much on the revenue. Was that a fair estimate of the tax collection? After looking at our past AFRs, our annual financial reports, I took an average of the last 4 years. The 4-year average was at 97.93%, and then our last 2 years collected was at 98.86. So I do think a 98.5% tax collection rate is a fair and pretty, accurate assumption to make in regards to revenue.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Scott. Kevin, did we ask Arias what he thought?
On the tax refunds, he felt that the number was consistent with what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
And in regards to, on page 14, I know the board has asked in the past that we at least try to start with some type of balanced budget. And so by going with the 98.5 and adjusting for the trending discussions with negotiations, this would give us a budget with about a $10,000 surplus.
There was a question on board book page 32, certified nurse, the difference on the salary. Our nurse, that was based off of a nurse coming back from a leave, and that would be her full-time salary. That's the difference on it. There was a question on the board TRS share under the business office. That was a typo. It reflects I believe a negative 74,000 on that. That should be just a flat, brand new cost. That is the cost of bringing on a business manager and the TRS reflected upon the salary of it.
The TRS is 8,800 though, not the
Yes,
74,000.
not the 74. There were some questions about when the public notice was placed in the paper. I submitted the public notice on August 3rd to run in the papers on August 10th to be in compliance with what Illinois School Code is for our public hearing and to be able to adopt our budget. So that is correct on that.
I also verified that today with legal as well, that we are fine.
And there were no further questions on the.
Does the board have any questions or comments at this time?
I have a question. Why is the science decrease $48,000 from the budget?
Okay, that was moving, I believe that was the workbooks.
Kristen, you want to speak to that since you helped put that together with Tim? What page are you looking at, John?
On 7, the summary memo.
So I believe that's because we had a certified staff member resign over the summer. And when we filled that position, we filled it with a brand new teacher whose salary was significantly less.
Okay.
Any other questions on this side? Any other questions on this side?
I was late, so we might have addressed it. I'm asking the same question I asked before. Change the percentage on the revenues to 98.5 or whatever the number is, but that still shows that our revenues will be down, just for the education fund, about $400,000 over the prior year. And I asked before, how could that happen? Did we get, maybe you answered it before I got here.
Yeah, Scott, why don't you give that explanation of how we came up with that number?
Okay, that's,
Okay, here, I understand you used a 4-year average.
Mhm.
Completely understand that. Averages are good if they provide the right information. But I'm trying to understand very specifically what set of circumstances could come up that the actual revenues next year, when we're putting in the assessment that'll be higher than last year, can come in just for one fund 400,000 less than we in actual.
okay. And at a prior board meeting, the board agreed to take $200,000 out of the educational fund and then 100,000 out of the operations and maintenance, and levy those 300,000 into the transportation fund, because the transportation fund was running a negative balance
Okay.
on it. What happens on that then is your tax base now becomes lower. So you can't increase when you're going with the levy process in that ed fund. So that was something that was decided to happen for the December collection by the board.
So that's 200 coming out of
Mhm.
that ed fund, so what about the other 200,000
And
then?
then it's just a guesstimate with it
Okay, so.
on that.
So we came in at
So-
98.5. He did a 2-year average. The last 2 years, you were at 98 what?
98.86.
So we put down 98.5 in this year's budget.
And the reason that it was over, with the prior year, yes, we were collected more taxes from the prior year than what we expected.
I thought we were over 100%
Yeah.
last year. And what was
For the prior year, yeah.
So
How'd
what
we come
numbers
up
did
with
you
a
use to
nu-
get your 98.86?
That, I used the annual financial report that we had done by our auditor.
But last year we were at
And
like
that-
102, right?
I'd have to look at the actual.
That means the year before we had to be at like 96, and I don't recall that we were down that low. I thought we were over budget 2 years in a row.
I do believe so. Well, let me verify.
So the previous discussions the board had was back in July, the first budget that the board seen was at a 97%. There
Mhm.
was some question that the board thought that was too low. So I had Scott run those averages, and we increased it to 98 in August, and now we put it up to 98.5. And then we justified the other increases in some of the trending discussions with negotiations and the other adjustments with medical insurance to bring us to roughly a $10,000 surplus. So I think Tim's question is still whether or not the board wants to go higher than that. That's something the board needs to decide.
Yeah, and all I can say is potentially maybe it was incorrectly calculated as to what the estimate would be, so it did look like you collected a lot more taxes than what.
Is there a chance
would have
that
been.
previous tax years, although they're received, they're then credited into AFR to the other fiscal years? So even though somebody may make a delinquent payment and it looks like it's coming in on this year's books,
Yeah, it could
then once the
potentially-
auditor corrects it, it goes back to the year that it was applied, originally intended for?
That is possible.
Kevin, you're learning something there.
So,
Do we have any other questions, or? All right, seeing none, the meeting will now be open for public discussion. All persons desiring to be heard will be heard at this time. The Board of Education welcomes and encourages the participation of its citizens in the business of the school district. Citizens are welcome to raise questions or make comments. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and cannot be combined. Please note the Board of Education will not answer questions or engage in dialogue during the visitor's comments. If a person would like additional time to address the board, such a request should be submitted in writing 48 hours before the meeting to the superintendent. In addition, the Board of Education is interested in receiving suggestions and concerns from members of the community. Any individual may make a suggestion or express a concern at the district or the school office. All suggestions and/or concerns will be referred to the appropriate level staff member or district administrator who is most able to respond in a timely manner. Each concern or suggestion shall be considered on its merit. An individual who is not satisfied after following the channels of authority may file a grievance under Board Policy 2:260, Uniform Grievance Procedure. Neither this policy nor the Uniform Grievance Procedure creates an independent right to a hearing before the board. For more details, please refer to Board Policy 2:230, Public Participation at the Board of Education meetings and petitions to the board, and Board Policy 8:110, Public Suggestions and Concern. I'd like to remind the crowd that for this, because we are in a public hearing on the budget, comments should be limited to only the budget that is being presented tonight. At this point, we will have other times that the visitors can comment. So I'm going to start on this side. Anybody want to talk, have any questions about the budget? Any comments? How about on this side? Does anybody want to? Okay. Seeing that no further comments from the public, I now declare the public hearing on the budget completed, and the regular meeting will now proceed.